Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network designed specifically for higher ed marketing leaders. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, hosted by Jamie Hunt, Chief Marketing Officer at Old Dominion University, has become an industry favorite. The show is sort of like a conference in a podcast, offering a blend of professional wisdom, innovative ideas, and personal anecdotes. Whether you're a higher ed marketer, a faculty member curious about the behind the scenes of university branding, or just someone with an interest in the intersection of education and marketing, the podcast is your gateway to the lesser known narratives of higher education. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Mastering the Next, a cutting-edge podcast that explores the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of AI and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Lutsky, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the thought leaders shaping the future of graduate enrollment management through technology. Mastering the Next is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that helps institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Today, artificial intelligence is used by university admission offices in many ways, from evaluating applicants' transcripts to providing prospective students with information about academic programs. Synthesizing information for enrollment managers makes sense, but what about the human element of admissions? While enrollment leaders clearly recognize the enormous benefits of leveraging AI, some are highlighting the need to avoid potential risks, particularly around social justice and equity, that come with the human touch. Joining me to discuss this emerging paradigm is Dr. Paul Marthers, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at Emory University. Paul, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Ray.
So what's next for the future of enrollment management in the age of AI, and how do you see emerging technologies shaping the strategies and practices at institutions like Emory?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? First of all, in enrollment management, there's always emerging technologies that can help guide tactics and guide strategies. And there's always that temptation to jump aboard the bandwagon of the new thing. And there's also often a bit of a fear that you could be left behind. I have found in my career that it's important to understand and have a good sense of what will this new technological sort of frontier look like. And so at this point, related to AI, I would say we don't know what AI is going to be in this field because it's not even close to being fully formed. I think we've been living really in the last 20 years through a kind of new technology hype cycle of just think about the online learning. Everyone was quick to say, not everyone, but many were quick to say, oh, it's going to transform higher education to the point where the bricks and mortar place-bound campus will be obsolete. As we've seen, that didn't come to fruition, but it's certainly made convenience, learning opportunities, supplementary ways to deliver courses. The pandemic, keeping universities open throughout, that would not have been possible without the technological breakthroughs related to online learning. So I think, in my opinion, it's a good idea to be constantly assessing where these technologies are going and making return on investment decisions about deployment of them. I see that happening to the point where at some point, some technology will be similar to maybe what happened in the CRM space, where there's convergence around a tool that works really well. And there's a consensus that this is a necessity in the way in the admissions, financial aid, enrollment space. That's what I see right now. Careful monitoring, understanding, and a certain amount of restraint related to grabbing on to something before you really understand what it is and what it's going to be. Really thinking a lot about the whole law of unintended consequences.
You're right that there are unintended consequences with the adoption of any technology. And in the context of enrollment management, from your perspective, what ethical challenges do you foresee as we move in this direction of adopting AI? How might institutions prepare to address these concerns responsibly?
That's something that's on my mind a great deal. I think about privacy issues. I think about um, I think about energy use issues. I mean, something that's not widely discussed is how energy intensive machine learning and the use of multiple machines and processing capabilities is in a time of climate change and a time of we be considering where we're drawing our energy sources. Are we being good to the planet, or are we working against the future of livability on this planet? Is something I think about personally. But I also think about just the difference between the earlier days of admissions when everything was on paper and everything was filed and everything was in a location specific to the university and or the college, and it could be retained or discarded based on the decisions made locally. Once you digitize things, you then you move into the whole cloud-based computing. Then you move into everyone's using certain tools. This information lives on, and it creates a number of legal challenges and legal issues and ethical issues about who has access to that, what is said. And so I do think we have seen technology change how admissions staff evaluate applicants. And I think one of the questions we're going to have to be willing to answer as enrollment management professionals is related to who is really doing the evaluation of these applicants. Is it a human being? Is it an AI tool? And we really have to come up with, I think, good ways of talking about that, and understanding how the public is going to feel about knowing they're being evaluated by an AI tool versus a human being. It could be that there's a generalized acceptance of it, given the movement of technology in many different directions that have been accepted widely. But it really will, I think, change the sort of rhetoric around what you said earlier, the human touch process, the idea that it's a human process, the idea that we are looking at an individual human being and assessing their ability to be successful in our college or university environment. I think we're going to have to really discuss with the brightest minds on our university campuses these questions and have good, persuasive, defensible answers for how we engage with the public on these issues.
And I get the sense from your answer that is part of the hesitation, I think, to fully implement an AI solution, is that student interactions, student services are influenced by that use of AI. So thinking about that personal touch, how do you envision being able to maintain that in student engagement?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have entered into the use of AI tools, I would say gently. For example, we employ chatbot technology, and it's meant to handle repetitive questions, what those kind of frequently asked questions that everyone used to either hand out sheets of paper explaining answers to them or put up on their websites. And we all know there's whether it's an airline site or our internet provider site, where I think all of us are becoming kind of familiar with interacting with a chatbot. Um, so, in implementing that chatbot, I've been very clear with the offices that it really should be the first line of communication and that it should answer basic questions up to the point where it's very clear that a human being needs to intervene because the questions are beyond the capability of the technology. And I believe that because in my interacting with various chatbots, it's very easy to become frustrated when you feel like you've hit a wall and you know the technology can't really comprehend what it is you're trying to do. And it just kind of gets stuck in a sort of, please rephrase your question. I don't understand you. And I do not want Emory University to be known among prospective students and their parents as this place that gets stuck in that loop. I'm always happier and I feel much better about companies where their chatbot or AI technology kicks me over to a human being, whether it's on a phone call or somebody is typing out answers on the other side. And so that's how I've instructed all of our offices is to just use it as that question's been asked 50 to 100 times a day. It's easy for a chatbot. And some students really do want to just, they're the ones who are the lurkers. They're looking at your website. They don't even want to engage and let you know who they are. They may not really want any human interaction at this point, and that's perfectly fine. And so the chatbot technology is a great supplement to what's on the website. But once you know, or a person wants to have that personal interaction with the university, well, I want that to happen because that's when the human touch comes in. And that to me, especially, I think it's going to be dependent a lot on how big you are. Are you a mass sort of crowd sourced or crowd based kind of environment? Or are you a more of a bespoke kind of environment? And I think the closer you are to that custom, and also if you're a high priced environment, you really won't, people are going to judge you on the quality of all of their interactions with you.
And that brings up a point around the student body and things that might deter an admission office from pursuing these strategies in terms of thinking about the student body. And how do you view the potential impact of AI in terms of specifically accessibility or diversity and equity issues when we talk about needing to have a human intervene? I'd assume those are some situations where we really need that human touch. How do you view the potential impact on that of AI?
Well, that's another aspect of AI that hasn't fully developed in ways that I think engender confidence in the decision makers in fields like enrollment. We all have read about the challenges related to facial recognition technology, for example. A few years ago, we had a great lecture by Joy Bulliam-Weaney, who's an expert on that, the time with the MIT Media Lab. And that really was eye-opening for many people, no pun intended. I would say that a lot of the use of AI also it depends on what your brand is. I think if you're a technologically based institution, there's probably a higher expectation of your constituents, your prospective students, and their influencers to be on the cutting edge of technology. And I think because number of your students are potentially prospective students are potentially wanting to work in these fields, they're excited about the progression of technology, and they want to be on the leading edge of inventing whatever it is, the field they choose. And so in those cases, I think there's going to be fewer concerns about the deployment of AI, including perhaps in the decision making about applicant pools, or the first cut, the first sorting, the determination of who makes it beyond round one. I think in a more liberal arts oriented, especially where there's human performance strengths such as theater, music, visual art, I think those kind of people are going to be a little less, I think, I would suspect, again, I don't want to stereotype anyone, a little more wary about too much or much use of AI in the process of interacting with them as prospective students. I think that high touch, highly personalized interactions are going to continue to matter a lot, especially for people who are looking for that in their college experience, and especially with people who are traveling a great distance to come and see you. On the other hand, and I remember this when you and I worked together, it's very important to stay on the leading edge of technology, for example, with guided tours using QR codes so that somebody can visit your campus and know where they are and hear some information about the building they're standing outside of, or hear something historical related to the campus location. And so in that regard, you're foolish for not taking advantage of opportunities to promote your institution and tell your stories in ways you might not have 20 or 30 years ago. It's just always the question is how far have you gone, and have you diluted that human touch, that personal interaction, to the point where the people who are looking for that question what it's going to be like when they're a student there. And so if you are projecting something that feels like you're distancing yourself from the individual, people may mistakenly say, oh, that's how it's going to be when I'm a student. And if, however, you get 50 to 100,000 applications, you're a quite large institution, then I think people are going to expect there's a certain amount of crowd control in the tactics you use, and they're going to probably think, well, this is good. They're being efficient. They're being efficient in how they interact with the masses, and as long as they're delivering me the information that I need, then they'll be satisfied. And there's less of an expectation. Like if you visit UCLA and Caltech in successive days, as I did with my daughter a few years ago, you have a higher expectation for some personal interaction at Caltech, given the size of the campus, versus UCLA, given the size of that campus. And if one school over delivers on your expectations, great. And especially bad if a school under delivers on your expectations.
I want to double click on something you just said because it's interesting to think about the difference between a STEM institution, like where we worked together at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, America's first technological university, and a much more comprehensive institution, an elite institution like UCLA or Emory. And I'm curious from your perspective and experience at Emory and other institutions, how are folks preparing for the role AI is going to play? If you had to give advice to someone in a role at an institution that's really wrestling with this, thinking about it in terms of a comprehensive university, not just a STEM institution, where, as you pointed out, it can be quite different. How would you help them address the current concerns and the cautious stance?
Yeah, I think it would be a basic think it through. Think about what this technology can do for you. Think about why you want to potentially use this technology, and think beyond your particular office needs, which includes engaging all of the people that you employ to help you do your work. And that includes the student workers who are your tour guides. And if you have overnight hosts, their opinions matter because they're closer to the audience you are trying to attract. Think about engaging other influencers, whether it's the guidance counselor community, a parent community, and or coaches, and or if you're a music or an art school, teachers, and just make sure that when you come to a conclusion about what you're going to use and why, that you've had enough deep and broad conversations so you're not surprised and you're not sort of cleaning up aisle 5, so to speak, because you hadn't thought about this. Which again, if you're listening to this, you're thinking he's saying be cautious. And I am. That's just who I am in terms of the work I do. And also because I'm at Emory University, where we're very, very fortunate where we sit in the sort of marketplace for prospective students. However, even if I was at a school closer to the brink of deciding whether it can exist or not, I would then put even more of a caution related to the return on investment frame. Instead of chasing some new technology because it's hot and I'm afraid I'm missing out, and sometimes those pressures come from above you, whether it's some board members who work in a technological field, or your president, or your provost is a STEM faculty member. You just need to think about, what do I deploy? What do I invest in? Is this a good use of our funds? Is this a good use of our resources of time? And if the answers are yes, then jump into it and make sure that you utilize this tool as effectively as you can. I suspect one of the areas where we will see AI make some inroads could be related to financial aid, scholarship aid optimization, which is already using and has for many, many years data tools and advanced data and modeling techniques. I think especially for the schools on the brink, it could turn out to be not only useful, but maybe even cost effective if a tool gets rolled out that is excellent and affordable.
That brings me to our last question, actually ties it up pretty nicely. Thinking about the diversity of the kinds of institutions we've been talking about, your experience in enrollment management and higher education, use your crystal ball for us and help us think about, where do you see this going? What is the balance between technological tools and human judgment going to be in enrollment and admissions in the future? Where do you see this all going?
Well, I think we've already heard where the movements are occurring. They tend to be occurring in the highest volume application institutions where there's just not a budget to have much of a human-centered evaluation process. So you think back to the early to mid-aughts when public, comprehensive, and/or flagship institutions where the admission rates were 50% or higher would put on their website some kind of tool where you would enter your grade point average and your standardized test scores and your class rank if you had one, and it would give you a sense of, are you getting in or not? I think I know, frankly, we're already seeing many of those institutions enter into the investigation, if not the employment of these kind of tools to help with a sorting process of vast numbers of their applicants, to sort those who have a chance into one pile, those who have no chance into another pile. And in some cases, if there are state guidelines as to who gets in, sorting them into you're getting an admission letter. And I think that is perfectly acceptable. And it's consistent with the brands of those institutions. It's efficient from the standpoint of how you're using taxpayer money. And that's happening. When I go to conferences, those are the institutions I hear saying, yes, we're employing it. I think when you get into the realm of private, generally considered expensive, generally considered more personal, schools promising you access to eminent faculty, seminar-style classes. I think that's where it's going to take a lot of thinking through and a lot of good explanation as to why and how and what. The why are you doing this, how are you doing this, and what is happening. And that what is happening needs to be evaluated so the institutions can determine, are we still being true to what we say about ourselves? Are we being true to our sort of reputation? And again, I think this is the careful analysis you need to go through versus let's just go and do this because it's going to save money. It's going to just reduce our budgetary investments over here. And I would argue that that's a good short-term maybe approach, but that's not, I think, going to serve you well in the longer run, especially given that we're in a time of activism. Your students, you've got to expect that if you have a student newspaper that is paying attention to the campus and is creating future Pulitzer Prize winning journalists, they're going to ask those questions. They're going to dig into and write a story about you. And so it's does this pass the story about us? Does this pass the article in the press test? So if you do anything and you're a high profile school, I would say make sure you pass the press test, which I think is easier for a big public because one of the passing the press test criteria is, we're saving the taxpayers' money. The legislators like us. We're seen as responsible constituents to our state, responsible servants. Whereas your private institution approaching $100,000 per year, recognize that may not, and you have an $85 to $100 application fee. Do parents and students want to hear that it was an AI tool that made the decision on you? And my guess right now is the answer is no.
It could break in so many different ways. And I think you're pointing out a lot of the ways that there's going to be a conversation ongoing about the role of AI and the human touch in enrollment management. Dr. Paul Marthers, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at Emory University. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Ray.
The Mastering the Next podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Cadieux, J.C. Bonilla, Mallory Wilsey, Brendan Henkel, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.